A lot of people think that entrepreneurship is sexy. They feel like, hey, if I'm an entrepreneur, I get to do what I want. I'm in control of my time. At least I think most people who try it out for the first time realize that it's really a hard life.
John Aguilar, entrepreneur, investor, and TV host for more than 2 decades. He's the creator of Asia's biggest and longest running business TV show, The Final Pitch, and shares with us the complexity of growing a mainstream media business as he scales to the Middle East.
Think of a business that is dependent on the latest technology or the latest thing is really the worst way to start a business. I think the way to start a business is to try to figure out what it is that you feel you would like to couple of years, right? Be willing to sacrifice everything because you believe in that thing so deeply.
It never gets easy, right? It never becomes super easy for an entrepreneur. You're always solving problems and working through stuff.
You definitely will have to make those sacrifices. So yeah, I think what I did as an athlete really prepared me well for that. If you're willing to work hard and you're willing to sacrifice all of this to be able to achieve this objective that you've set out for yourself, I think that translates to success later on.
I've got a quick favor to ask you. Nearly 90% of people listening to this podcast right now don't follow or subscribe to us. And my goal is to get that down to 80%. So if you've ever liked an episode or a clip that we've put out, please could you click that follow or subscribe button. It helps us more than you know to bring more guests onto the podcast and put out better and better content for you. Thank you. Before we dive into this episode, I want to take a second to speak about our sponsor, Pith Stem, who we are thrilled to have on this journey with us. As someone who is always looking for ways to improve my healthy hustle, Pith Stem's DropTop desk stood out to me as the best full work from home solution on the market. The world of work from home is changing, and a laptop or screen perched on your lap or dining room table isn't enough anymore. It's imperative that we have a solution at home that matches our productivity station that we can have in our office. But of course, homes weren't made to be worked in, and not all of us want a dedicated study. That's why I'm so happy that Pith Stem created this perfect solution. They designed this desk with both the needs of the professional and their home in mind. It's perfect because it allows me to have a full productivity station that suits my needs and helps me get the most out of every minute that I spend at it, not only so I work comfortably, but that I actually enjoy it. And the best thing about DropTop, I can close and lock it at the end of the day to keep work and home separate. And it looks awesome on the wall. You can get your DropTop desk anywhere in the world from pithandstem.com or just Google DropTop and you'll find it pretty quickly. So John, where did your passion for business first start?
Passion for business is something that I think I can trace to when I was brought up in an entrepreneurial household. My parents were in the tailoring business, right? This was in the 80s. There were no malls that time. And they had a tailoring business that they inherited from my uncle. So they were doing that for a number of years until the time when it went down. Like no one was having their clothes sewn, maybe mid to late 80s. So they actually lost their business. When it went down, my dad, who was really into antiques, instruments, furniture, figured, okay, I got to do something. So he actually made his hobby, which was collecting antiques, into their next business. So I guess my parents being serial entrepreneurs, having failed on their first venture, and then coming up with something that, was literally nothing just a few months before. And eventually that's what put us through school. That kind of, I think, instilled in me the idea that, one of these days I could do something with nothing, right? I could create an enterprise that maybe I'm passionate about, maybe I like doing, and actually making money out of it. I knew that I was unemployable, right? I would never get into like a serious day job. And I just felt that life was for me. And that's kind of the path that I took after I graduated from college, doing a little bit of freelance stuff, but eventually deciding that, okay, entrepreneurship for me is the way to go.
Interesting. Okay. And what do you remember from that time when your parents were going through that roller coaster of, 1 minute it's working and then it starts to crumble and you've got to start something else? What do you remember from the home life at that point?
A lot of people think that entrepreneurship is sexy. They feel like, hey, if I'm an entrepreneur, I get to do what I want. I am in control of my time. In a lot of ways, that's correct. But I think a at least I think most people who try it out for the first time realize that it's really a hard life, right? The glamour, if it ever comes later on. And what you realize is that as you're doing something, you're actually doing a lot of things simultaneously, especially at the beginning. You're the main sales guy, you are the driver, you are the one who sweeps the floor. You're literally a one-man army, which I think because I was a decathlete way back during my college years, my high school and college years, I think my sport, my track and field and the decathlon, which is 10 events, I think really prepared me well for entrepreneurial life.
I think it's such a good point because, a lot of people, especially in this day and age, and it must have been very different in the times we're talking about now, but in this day and age, everyone thinks they're an entrepreneur, quote unquote. Everyone's like, I'm an entrepreneur. And actually, an entrepreneur is effectively just someone that goes into the market and adds value and expects to be profitable, right? That's all it is. And so it's not sexy at all. And there's a lot of hard work. And we know a lot of people that really struggle with the idea of either they can't get it off the ground and they're really frustrated that their skills aren't being recognized, or they've got it off the ground, but it's still hard and they want to know when it's going to get easy. And I think you know better than I probably that it never gets easy, right? It never becomes super easy for an entrepreneur. You're always solving problems and working through stuff. I wonder, what that was like when you were growing up, and even in your high school and college years, and you were doing the decathlon and being super busy, and you're still watching your parents who are making a success of it, but it was probably not as smooth as most people think entrepreneurship is. What was that like, seeing them work really long hours and then maybe having time off when everyone else was working, and that sort of strange upbringing for many?
Yeah. I think it puts entrepreneurship in a very healthy perspective for me. I had no preconceived notions that, okay, once I become successful and that's it, I'm sitting on like wads of money and, just setting off into the sunset, buying my sports car and all that. I knew that entrepreneurship is going to be a never-ending, I wouldn't say struggle, but it's going to be a never-ending challenge. I think to be able to be successful in what you do at that moment in time just really paves the way for what you want to do or become later on. For me, entrepreneurship is a constant journey, both of self-discovery of yourself and of the market that you're trying to serve. So I feel like that, for me, is part of the lure of entrepreneurship. I think if you find something you're really good at, has a market, something that people are willing to pay for, you find that. But then again, once you achieve that, what's the next thing? So it's that constant trying to look for the next thing, and the next thing that excites you is what excites me. So the whole process of, discovering a new industry, getting into something, possibly, making a name for yourself in the sense that you're able to really solve something significantly and really impacting people's lives. That's really where, it gets really interesting for me.
Yeah, I completely agree. The impact on other people's lives. When someone says, are we really struggling to get our business to work? That's basically the first thing I think of. Are you impacting anyone's life? And if they say no, or if maybe they say yes, but you can see that they're not, you go, that's why it's not working then.
Exactly.
Probably. You're not adding massive value to the market. Just really interesting. And I will get onto this because you're around a lot of entrepreneurs who are all vying for attention. But I'm interested to hear from you, what that early life was like. So you talked about decathlon, I was going to say playing decathlon, competing in decathlon, and studying psychology, right, at university.
Right.
What was that time in your life like? And why did you start decathlon? As of all sports, you've picked all of them.
I think I'm a masochist in some ways. I like going to the direction that no one is prepared to go. I have a very high tolerance for pain and rejection. I think the decathlon is probably one of the hardest events that you can get into. Effectively, the decathlon champion is someone who is known as the best all-around athlete. I mean, you can do everything. You can jump, you can sprint, you have pretty decent endurance. In a lot of ways, being a decathlete means that you have given up a lot of your time, a lot of comfort to be able to excel, not just in one event, but in multiple events. That if it comes down to it, it's just really also a matter of, pain tolerance and just you putting in more hours of work, of sacrifice than your competitor. To me, it boils down to, if you're willing to work hard and you're willing to sacrifice all of this to be able to achieve this objective that you've set out for yourself, I think that translates to success later on. And I feel that, me being an athlete way back when has really prepared me well for the suffering that I will be enduring, which, you as an entrepreneur also realize, and everyone else who's, had an idea that they wanted to, put out into the world and actually make money and make an impact, you definitely will have to make those sacrifices. So yeah, I think what I did as an athlete really prepared me well for that.
It just screams discipline to me. Like you're able to compete at that level in not just one sport, in so many different disciplines, and then study at the same time, right? And that was an undergrad, right, in psychology.
Right.
So how do you think learning psychology is? We've got someone who's done psychology on our team because it's so valuable to us in what we do, in terms of looking at how to tell stories and promoting different people in different ways. I'm interested to know how, you had the discipline to be able to study and compete at the same time, but also how psychology, learning it, then enabled you to win or do better in sport and then subsequently in your business career.
Right. Yeah. The reason why I took up psychology back in college was I really didn't know what to do, right? I didn't know what I was going to become, what I wanted to get into. So I figured that psychology as a base, no matter what you do in life, you're always going to be dealing with people, right? That's a fact. And, I thought that was going to be a good preparation for whatever I get into. It just so happened that I got into business. I got into media, in fact, right after college. So you talked about discipline, right? The fact that you have that discipline, but also kind of that interest in how people think, how people are motivated, was really a healthy perspective for me getting into media and getting into business in general. I feel like my inclination to trying to find out people's motivations, what makes them not tick, but what makes them gravitate towards an idea that you can put out there, knowing that they are motivated by certain things, or knowing their background, or knowing what they're currently doing or are into. I think it really allows you to be able to get a perspective, not on how you will pitch something to them, but really on how you can actually create something that will be solution, or something that they can really use or add value to their lives. Because I think every product, service, pitch is really supposed to be a two-way thing, right? It's not because, I have something that I'm willing to offer you and I can sell you in on. It's really acknowledging and knowing that to be able to have a good relationship with someone, you have to be able to have something that you genuinely know can add value to them, right? I produce a show called The Final Pitch. It's literally a pitch competition, but at the end of the day, the best pitches are the ones where, I'm not just selling you in on my product. I'm really giving you something that I know if you get into this, or if we do work together, you and I would have a mutual benefit. And I think that's something that a lot of entrepreneurs who are pitching something tend to forget, right? And that's why I feel like it's also important for you to know that who you're pitching to is equally as important as what you're pitching. That other person has to really benefit from what it is that you're offering. If not, you're just trying to get money or whatever. But there has to be that value. And I think if you know that value that you can offer or that you can give to that other person, then you kind of already are choosing rightly who you should pitch to, because I think that's important. Whatever result that pitch comes down to, I think the success of that pitch and that partnership is really dependent on a good fit. So I think that's what people sometimes don't think. I'm just gonna pitch like 1,000 things to 1,000 people, right? Yeah. But there really has to be that fit for it to succeed.
There has to be. I think you're completely right, and the way you said it then, that's really clear. If it's not going to benefit the person, effectively you're duping them or deceiving them. People can feel that. I think I've read you say this before, right? People can really feel it if you're pitching something and it's not mutually beneficial. Because the whole point of a service or a product is that it benefits someone. I thought it's just a scam, isn't it? So it's really interesting to hear that. I'm interested as well, John, in how that discipline at a young age impacted your relationships. Because as you grow into an entrepreneur, a lot of people that we speak to, and my own belief is that you alienate people. It's difficult to keep all the friendships and all the relationships together because you're going in a different direction, or you're not doing a 9 to 5. You've got to commit to whatever it is you're doing and trying to grow. And so you had that from an early age with the sports. I'm imagining you had to go out, and when everyone was partying, you were in the gym or whatever. Sure. So how did that impact you in your sort of early development in your early 20s?
Right. I would think that taught me early on that, one, you can't be perfect. You can't be everything to everyone. If you choose to go down a certain path, you know that you are foregoing doing certain things that you might enjoy, but decide because you want to pursue that higher thing, then everything else falls on the wayside. That's the thing with committing to something, right? Committing to something means that you forgo some things that may not add value to your mission. But then again, it's committing to that something that allows you to be able to get to a place where, I am the best at this because I chose to forego other aspects of my life. I mean, it's hard. It's a difficult decision and path, but that's a kind of sacrifice that is that needs to be done. I feel like, especially in this day and age, it's so easy. It's so comfortable to think, because we have access to, all of these things that we have. It's so easy to say, I'd like work-life balance.
Yeah.
I want to be able to have my cake and eat it too. But the fact of the matter is, if you really deeply want to achieve something, there are going to be times in your life when you won't be comfortable, when you will disappoint your spouse or your child. Like for me right now, I'm in Dubai. I'm effectively pitching my show, The Final Pitch, to the region and to Dubai, right? I'm meeting with prospective judges, partners, venues. I chose to do this, and today I have like 5-6 meetings. I'm up early. I will get my exercise done. But this whole day is going to be about me pitching and selling this vision to this part of the world. The fact that in 2 days, I'm going to be missing my son's 10th birthday.
Mm-hmm. It's a big commitment, right? But you're doing it for a reason and a value that you believe in. So you know that it can benefit the region, and it's a sacrifice that I'm sure he'll understand.
It's hard, man.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's hard.
I'm interested in when you're first writing for a publication, right? You're doing writing when you finish. I believe you were finishing college and you began writing, and you started to learn and understand what storytelling was about. Which you've subsequently gone on and you're talking then about how you're pitching this effective storytelling show because you're telling other people's stories and they're telling stories through their pitches. What was that role like, and what did you learn when you were writing for this publication?
Me writing for a publication was a way for me to get to understand, I would think, the very linear way of storytelling, right? I think the discipline of being a journalist and the discipline of, putting into 1,000 words what you want to be able to communicate was a good way to kind of set the tone for how storytelling should be done, let's say in the corporate environment or dealing with sponsors, right? Because if you're a storyteller, if you're if you're a fiction writer, right? The world has no bounds, right? But in reality, if you are in business or you have content that actually needs to achieve something, you have to be able to work within the bounds of certain expectations from your sponsors, from your audience. And I think it's trying to fit that within the context of something creative, a creative endeavor, but within the bounds of trying to achieve certain objectives. So I think that's kind of the discipline that it taught me, writing for a newspaper or writing a column, writing for a magazine, right? It's that kind of discipline that, sure, I can say whatever I want, but it has to be of service to both the audience of that publication and what I'm trying to say at that moment. So I think that balance is good at the start and allows you later on to be able to kind of figure out, okay, Now that I know the rules, why don't I break them now?
Yeah, I like that. And also, that builds confidence, right? And you touched a minute ago on confidence again, really, in the way that you were talking about working so hard on something that when you actually do it, you can't really go wrong. And that's why the sacrifices are worth it, because we have the confidence in what we're doing. And so to hear you again say that actually there's an underlying part about confidence in there is really interesting to me. And I wanted to ask you, this actually relates to the startups that you work with or you listen to and they pitch and whatever, is that how important do you think it is for someone to have at least attempted to master or develop a skill before they start trying to sell it or get into the industry around it? Because I think so many people spot something, I don't know what it might be next year, the world of AI, they'll spot it and try and sell something without learning about it, without understanding it so much. And relating to the final pitch, I wonder if you see people that come in and just, they don't actually know exactly what they're going to do. They've just had an idea. And I'm interested in your thoughts on the importance of developing a skill to a really high degree before you start trying to say, I'm the expert or whatever you might say.
Yeah. I think there's a very real struggle, especially with new entrepreneurs right now, to just kind of jump on the bandwagon. Like a couple of years ago, it was blockchain. Now it's AI, right? So to actually come up with something that kind of just rides on that bandwagon, but not really being true to your North Star or why it is exactly you're doing what it is that you're doing, I think that's the biggest mistake. I think to be able to think of a business that is dependent on the latest technology or the latest thing is really the worst way to start a business, right? I think the way to start a business is to try to figure out what it is that you feel you would like to just really for the next couple of years, right? Be willing to sacrifice everything because you believe in that thing so deeply, so that when you know that it's aligned with what it is that you feel you're really passionate and want to solve, regardless what technology or what new shiny thing comes, you won't get distracted and just say, oh, I think I'm going to drop this because this is the new thing now. It's really all about trying to find, it's been said so many times, but really finding that why and being intimately aware internally that I don't care what's going to happen the next couple of years. I know that this is the direction that I want. That new technology or whatever it is just going to be something that, I may or may not use, but I know for a fact that this is the problem that I want to solve. I really want to get there. And I think that is key to finding a business that regardless, what steps you take to get there, that's going to be something that will be hopefully successful because you know that, whatever happens, you're going to dedicate your, blood, sweat, and tears to making sure that you achieve that.
Yeah, I agree. Can I ask why you do what you do?
Asking me what I do is, I don't even know where to begin to answer that question, because I'd like to say I'm a storyteller, but I think that's just one aspect of what I do. I'd like to say that I'm someone who likes doing things that have never been done before. That's also part of what I do. But I think if I really think about it, what I am is really, and I think what my genius is that no matter what I think of at that particular moment in time, that year or that moment, I think my kind of gift is that I think of something, I imagine it, I know that I'll be able to get it done. Not cocky or presumptuous, but I know that if I really want something, I know that I will be able to figure out, the people that I need to talk to or the kind of next steps that I need to take. I know that I'm going to work my ass off. And I know that, regardless what that is at that moment in time, I know that it will happen because I kind of manifest it already. I'm already imagining, for example, entering an industry that a year from now, even if I have absolutely no contacts or knowledge in that industry, a year from now, I'm going to get up on a stage somewhere and kind of speak of this industry as someone who's done something there, because of the impact that I was able to create. And so it's that kind of forward thinking that I know that if I get into something, because I will talk to the right people eventually, I will figure it out, and I will have the 1001 conversations, steps, moves, little daily check-ins, emails that will take me there. Because I'm not afraid to put in the work. And I'm never afraid to kind of figure things out, because I know that I'm getting in there as someone who has virtually no knowledge, and just willing to learn about everything along the way.
I think so many people have said it before, but you literally can't fail until you stop, right? Like, you've got that visionary energy where you're like, okay, I've done something, I've learned the skill, I've done something, I've got my North Star, this is what I am, this is who I am, and you're just going to keep going until different parts align, right? And you've already created something incredible that we'll touch on in a minute in Philippines and Asia, and then we'll move across into Middle East, and who knows where it will go. I'm interested in preceding that with what took you to the point where you wanted to start your own production company. Like, we were talking about this before we started, you've clearly got this visionary energy, and you have people around you that are able to build stuff for you and with you. But at least where I come from, a production company is it's a scary thing.
Yeah.
That is something with a lot of moving parts, a lot of trends to keep an eye on. What was the thought process, and what did it look like when you started that company?
When I started my company, it was after I had experience working for, at that time, what was the Philippines' biggest TV network, ABS-CBN. So I was working on this show. It was a big show by Chris Aquino, who was like an icon in the Philippines. She had this show called Game Ka Na Ba? And we would film these episodes from like 4 p.m. till around 6 a.m. the next day. We would do like 3-4 episodes. We had about maybe 100 people on set. And I was like, okay, this is what, being on big TV looks, feels, sounds like. My real intention working on that show was that I wanted to be able to learn as much as I could and kind of figure out, okay, this is how they do it here. This is as big as it can get here on primetime TV. But what if I create something that is so far removed from what this is? Because this show, in particular, back in the early 2000s, was like, on primetime TV. It was what Filipinos were consuming and what they're used to. But my vision always was to be able to one day create my own TV production company where I would create content that would be catering to a different market, to a different kind of thinking, to a different Filipino that is not looking to just get entertained, be it, throwing pies at each other's faces or getting into arguments and just making a whole, thing, dramatic, whatever intro that kind of sells. But, I wanted to create content that people would not just be inspired by, but really learn from and take their ideas into something that they could really add value in this world. So I really wanted desperately to come up with my own content that I knew, could change the way Filipinos think about their lives, about opportunities, and about their future. And so, me starting my real estate show, which was, my first show was a dance competition, it was kind of entertainment, but really my first foray into business television was my real estate show.
I just want to briefly interrupt this podcast so I can talk to you about Nutrition Kitchen, who have kindly sponsored this episode. As entrepreneurs who are looking to stay as healthy as possible, fueling ourselves with high quality food without breaking the bank or wasting time can be tough day to day. Nutrition Kitchen solves that issue by delivering incredible meals to your door, tailored to your diet, whether you're trying to lose weight, build muscle, or maintain balance. They change their menus all the time so you can choose from a variety of dishes and leave the monotony of meal prepping behind. Now, back to our guest.
Because of that show, I saw an opportunity to be able to create, at that time, an underserved market. There was no real estate show out there. And because I had to be creative with, kind of like the business model of how we scale this show, a lot of suppliers that wanted to advertise with us, who were paying us with barter items like, bathroom fixtures and such. I actually created an opportunity for us to actually build houses on that show. So I built through the years different concept homes, which allowed us to just totally change the business model of how TV advertising and production was being done in the Philippines. So I did this for a number of years, reached 20 seasons of that show. But I think, the real big and I think game-changing show for us is really the final pitch, which is a cross between Dragon's Den or Shark Tank and The Apprentice.
Yeah, and this is what I want to talk about, because the whole way leading up to this has been getting ready for the final pitch, right? Which is you're in Dubai because you're bringing it to the Middle East, and this is a show that I think we're doing incredibly well here. And it was the first business show in the Philippines.
That's correct.
And it's the longest running business show in, is it Asia?
I would think so, right? Yes.
Right. So yeah, and you described it brilliantly. I saw an episode this morning, and it is very, so in the UK we would call it Dragon's Den. In the US and a lot of the rest of the world is Shark Tank, where you're effectively pitching investors for investment and supporting growing a business. In conjunction with then The Apprentice, which is Donald Trump used to do it in the US, or in the UK we've got Alan Sugar, and you're looking for an investment or a job. It depends which series you're on, season you're on. So I'm interested in why entrepreneurship. Like, why is we started at the beginning of this conversation talking about your passion for business and media, but why entrepreneurship as a show? What is it about bringing these startups on? Well, they're pre-startup, a lot of them, that you love so much?
Yeah. Entrepreneurship has never been something that automatically Filipinos think as a path for them, right? I mean, Filipinos, by and large, were, raised as, I will study well. Hopefully I'll get a good job and, work for maybe a big company, right? Mm-hmm. That would be like a good, solid, predictable path for most people. But the path that not a lot of Filipinos take is really entrepreneurship. Although there are, even the market vendors, the little, sidewalk, entrepreneurs out there. The fact of the matter is, Filipinos, even if they're not trained or automatically think of entrepreneurship, there are a lot of entrepreneurs. 98% of the businesses in the Philippines are small, medium enterprises, and to be able to have a show that is beyond just like a pitching format, that actually takes people on a journey with these entrepreneurs from their initial pitch, and then a mentoring component to that, and then also learning from the businesses of the judges, because we have the entrepreneurs actually take tours to the businesses of these established judges, and then culminating with the Dragon's Den / Shark Tank moment of actually getting an investment or partnership at the end for the finale. Really having that hero's journey and following that entrepreneur throughout this series, where literally the transformation of their business and their pitch is really night and day. So for a very nascent entrepreneurial ecosystem and startup ecosystem in the Philippines, that is like a godsend, to people who want to learn, right? Because there's only so much you can learn from a pitch. But I feel like when you introduce mentors, when you introduce, the very successful businesses of the judges, that you can actually get a sneak peek and actually see like the behind the scenes of how these judges run their businesses, then all of a sudden it's a very, I would say, not just entertainment, but in kind of like an infotainment and documentary even of success that you would never find just in a pitching competition format. So I think that's the beauty of what we've created with the final pitch. It's really, regardless what ecosystem that this show enters, whether it's a mature ecosystem or one that is quite, in need of, more guidance, mentorship, I think, it really solves, the question of, what is a business show that can add value to, a business ecosystem, regardless where it's placed in the world. So I feel that's what we've been successfully able to do in the Philippines, and I'm sure, in some other parts of the world, and that's why we're here in Dubai right now.
And I love that you said the hero's journey, because one of the things I completely agree with there is that with the Dragon's Den in the UK, you see the pitches one after the other. again and again and again. So maybe in an hour you'll see, I don't know, 6 or 10 pitches. But you never see how they actually get on. Only if someone like Stephen Bartlett invests, he then may put it on his YouTube channel and say, do you want to follow along a bit? But he's doing it out of his own, his own media budget. I would love to see how each of these pitches or these companies go on, because a lot of them don't actually go through. The deals don't go through, and then they might just go bust. Nothing actually happens. Whereas you track them. So you're actually, like you said there, it's actually an educational piece, which I think is really important. So I'm interested in how you manage to balance the glorification of entrepreneurship with just inspiring a nation that there is a possibility of something else. Because it must be a difficult balance. You don't want everyone to think this is the way forward, because it's hard, like we touched on earlier. So how do you make that balance?
Yeah. Well, allow me to share a story with you.
Please.
So I think it was 2 years ago when I launched my book, The Art and Science of the Pitch. So I think by that time, I think we were maybe 7 seasons in. And, this couple comes up to me and says, we come all the way from the province of Pampanga, and we're here because we've always wanted to meet you to tell you that during the pandemic, just by watching the final pitch, we were both inspired and informed of how to possibly start and run our enterprise that started from 0 employees to now 200.
Wow.
So I was just really blown away that, this couple from the province actually created an enterprise that was inspired by our show and actually grew it to a 200 headcount business. And that just really blew me away, because it was exactly what we hoped to achieve with this show, right? I mean, imagine someone getting sort of like a playbook of how to run their business just by watching your TV show. I mean, to me, that's like one of the greatest achievements that I would think, beyond, just reaching so many seasons. It's really having an impact on people, creating something that actually people not just learn from, but are informed of how to go about, growing, scaling their business. Same thing, for example, with my real estate show. Because I had that show, and because I also wrote a book on how to build your home from scratch, I actually also had people coming up to me saying I had actually built a contracting company based on what I learned in your show and what I read in your book. So if you can just imagine the kind of snowball effect that our shows have had on the Philippine economy. I mean, I don't want to oversell our impact, but it's kind of, when you hear these stories of these individuals coming up to you saying, we actually created our company based on what we've learned in your shows and in your books. That to me is like, it just makes everything, the sacrifice and everything that we've been doing, so worth it.
Yeah, it's incredible. So what you're saying is that you think the show is positioned just right to get people to take action without thinking entrepreneurship is going to be their almighty, easy, smooth riding way to making lots of money. You think the balance there is already showcased to be working?
I think we're very honest, and even when people ask me, how many of these deals actually get done,
Okay.
right? And that's one aspect of it. We never make a promise. This is no silver bullet. It's never a guarantee. And I feel like through the years, more and more people who come out on the show, maybe not getting something from the show, will realize the things that will set them up for their next venture. In fact, we've had a lot of entrepreneurs who didn't really make it in their first opportunity on the show. Maybe their startup is no longer existing. We gave them a second chance, a third chance even. And, some of these companies actually, created a business that was actually better than the first thing that they pitched. And had they gone on another journey, but the fact that they came back and actually came up with something better, just goes to show, right? Your current failures, will lend you the kind of insights that will make you a better entrepreneur, that maybe will set you up for your next venture that may succeed.
So you're actually also giving an education to those that are actually brave enough to come and have a go. They're having an education of where they could go wrong with some incredible entrepreneurs that you have as judges. I'm interested to hear some of the things that go wrong when the people are pitching. So you've seen a lot of pitches, right? These people coming from far and wide to pitch to these incredible entrepreneurs to try and get that investment and go on this hero's journey. What are some of the things that you've seen that you go, this makes a bad pitch? I know you've now written a book basically on what makes a great pitch. So what do you see that makes a terrible one?
Okay. Excuse me. Okay. I think the worst pitches are the pitches where you're pitching to someone that you shouldn't really pitch to, right? I think one of the most important things that you should learn, and you will learn this a hard way, is that you don't need to pitch to everyone, right? You have to pitch to the right one. Sometimes it's not about the numbers. It's not about the volume of pitches. It's really about pitching your business, your service to the right person. Because if what you're pitching will not add value to that other person, then the pitch is not genuine, right? If what you're pitching is just something that, for all intents and purposes, is just going to add value to your life or to your journey, then you might as well just pitch it to your parents or to your siblings, right? Because I think the pitches that really make it worth it are, for example, if you're a VC or if you're an angel investor, I have to be able to pitch something to you that I know once you invest in this, your money is going to be smart money, right? Because I'm pitching this to you because you are the right person, you are the right partner for this venture. The perfect pitch is one where the relationship is built on having that exchange, whether that's the monetary exchange or the kind of partnership, but it really leads to something bigger than your individual selves. So I think at the end of the day, when you create a business or when you onboard a partner, it has to be able to generate something that's so big of value to both of you for you to be able to take it to that level where it really makes it worth it for you to get into this partnership with that other person. So I think that's very important. It's not just how you pitch it, it's who you pitch it to.
So I'm relating that to watching Dragon's Den, right? And so in Dragon's Den, you've got different entrepreneurs, exactly the same as yours, right? Where you've got different entrepreneurs, different ages, different backgrounds, different specialties. And more often than not, hopefully they've done the research on who these people are.
Yes.
Sometimes they don't, and they don't know who they're talking to.
Exactly.
And therefore, if they all say, yes, we'll invest, they can't pick one because they don't know who is the one to go for. But in the UK at the moment, what's happening is people always want to go with Stephen Bartlett. Mm-hmm. We spoke about this before a little bit. Because he's got such a reach on social media, he hasn't got the most money. He's got a great contact book. And, there's other guys either side of him that might be better people to go for, but they go with him because his personal brand is so much. And they probably think they know the most about him. Is that what you're saying? Is it worth going after the person that you feel most related to? Or do you think you should be looking at where the best place for your startup is to go? What's the trade-off?
For sure. It's all about the fit. Okay. It's all about the fit. I think that's, what I feel like, shows like Dragon's Den and Shark Tank teach people, right? And the judges will, let you know, right? I can help you this way. I can help you. I may not necessarily give you the most money, but because I can take you to market or because I can make strategic partnerships work for this partnership, then I'm the best person for you. So sometimes the judges need to spell it out. But, the best entrepreneurs are really the ones that from the bat, they know, right? It actually is integral to their pitch. They're very specific, right? They know who they want to get the investment from. They know the next steps. And if you can paint that picture of how you can forge this partnership, and it's a two-way street, that value all of a sudden, becomes equally important to what it is exactly you're looking for.
What about when you're watching the pitches, or maybe they're doing interviews that even get on to your show? The most cringy part for me is when they start to ask about the numbers and the person has no clue.
Right.
If they forget it, fine. But if they've got no clue or they get stumbled in their maths, it's so cringy to watch, isn't it? How do you sort of prepare people for that? You know, what's that bit of advice you give them before you go on that might help them with the bumps that you know they're going to come across?
Right. You know, most founders are visionary entrepreneurs, right? Most of them, I'm not generalizing for everyone, but a lot of them are not really into the numbers or the how do we make this happen, because eventually they'll figure out if they don't have that person yet, they will need that person to come on board. So this is the finance person or this is the operations person, because what you get is usually you would have a founder and, you know, through no fault of their own, this is the charismatic, you know, visionary founder who has a talent of kind of figuring out, okay, this is a good business to get into. I know that I have the capability, the skill, the charisma to be able to onboard and enroll people into my idea. But they need to be able to figure out early on that for them to get a proper investment, they have to get that numbers person on board. Yeah. They have to get that person who is not thinking everything's going to be okay into their team. Because once you have that perspective, which, you know, it should be a healthy way of looking at your business, then you are prepared to answer the tough questions, right? And until you get those members into your team, I think it's going to be one-sided and not really you're not really prepared for where ideally you should be in a place where you're actually willing to have that conversation with the investor. So, so my advice always to entrepreneurs is that, you know, you as an entrepreneur, I know who you are, right? I know that you're thinking how much money you can make, but you're not thinking of the downside and you're not thinking of, you know, after getting this investment, how exactly are you going to be using that money? And what are the pitfalls that you should be wary of? So my advice would always be make sure that those weaknesses, those skills that you don't have, make sure that you onboard the right person for that. For some, it's, you know, getting someone who is maybe the CFO or maybe the numbers guy. For some who maybe have put up their company because they're a developer or they're an engineer or tech guy, they need someone to be able to help them sell the idea. So regardless who you are and, you know, what your strengths are, you have to be able to make sure that you have a very well-balanced team. Because unlike, you know, what I mentioned to you earlier, me being a decathlete, unlike the decathlon, you know, in business, you cannot do everything all at once, all the time. And should you be in a position where you're already ready to scale, you have to have the right people there with you, right? You can't do all 10 events at the same time on your own.
Or you can try, but you're going to lose at every single one of them, right? You can't spread it too thin.
Exactly.
Really interesting. Do you think you could share a story about the worst pitch you've seen? Is there one that comes to mind where you just go, you haven't got to say the name of the person or the company, but is there one that you just go, that one was a bad one, and then explain why and what we can learn from it?
I don't know if there's really a really bad pitch because there's just so many.
Yeah.
Okay. So really bad pitch. A really bad pitch is a pitch where you have absolutely no care in the world who it is that you're pitching to. A bad pitch is a pitch where they're pitching something that they know. A bad pitch is a pitch where they have absolutely no idea who they're pitching to. Meaning they don't know who the person is, they don't know the value of the person, and they only care for getting something from that pitch. Meaning, I just need the money, right? Sometimes it's actually funny how ill-prepared some people are. They have absolutely no idea that what they're pitching is actually going to be a competitor or something, you know, that will be totally a conflict for the interest of that other person. So, you know, it only goes to show sometimes that, you know, you kind of know the caliber, the quality of an entrepreneur based on, you know, how ill-prepared they are, you know, to get into the next, you know, steps with these things. So yeah, I would say those are the worst pitches.
I think it's really interesting that you you touched on that there, because when I'm hearing that, I'm thinking about it's all in the research then, right? So you've mentioned a few times it's an understanding who the person is, making sure that the value you have is applicable to the person that's going to receive it. And so it comes down to a lot about the research, which is, I think, in my mind, there's not enough emphasis put on research in a lot of areas. So when you're pitching to people, sure, or when you're trying to make a sale, sure, when you're trying to get a partnership or something, even on a podcast, like people that we've had come on here, most people that are brilliant, including yourself, you know the podcast, you know who the audience are, you can make assumptions, but you've asked or whatever. We've had people that come on that are able to speak about exact things that we've done in the past and as a guest. So the research is incredible. And I hope vice versa, we do enough research that we understand the value of the person in front of us. And it all comes down to research, which is really interesting that you then made that link to pitching, because I didn't think I would have thought of that. I think pitching is make sure I know my numbers, make sure I know my product, make sure I can talk about where I'm going to spend the money or whatever.
Right. It shouldn't be one size fits all.
Yeah, that's
right?
interesting.
It shouldn't be. It should never be that way. Yes, it takes a little bit more work, but I think the work that goes into trying to research that other person or organization really goes a long way. I mean, sometimes even, we even encourage some of our entrepreneurs who pitch to kind of even include, the businesses of the judges on their slides, just to be able to paint a picture of, okay, if we do this partnership with you, then it would look this way.
Wow.
And being very specific on how they could possibly benefit from that investment. So yeah, that is a very big part of what we advise as well.
So you've got 5 people in front of you, and you're saying when you come in to pitch, tailor it to each one of them in your tone of voice and the things you're saying, right?
For sure, but to never tailor it in such a way that even if there's not a good fit, you kind of try to make it fit, right? I mean, be very specific only to the person that you know is going to have value based on that pitch.
So you don't want to alienate anyone as well. That makes sense. How important is simplicity when you're listening to a pitch, but also if you move it into the business world as well? If you've got an incredible pitch that's very simple, but what about if the startup idea is very complicated?
Yeah.
I think it's really interesting that people say, if you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it.
Right.
If you don't understand it, no one understands it. So how important is that simplicity piece to pitching and early stage startup ideas and presentations?
Yeah. Steve Jobs once said that, simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. I feel that the way we've guided our entrepreneurs, even from their deck to their manner of speaking, we always emphasize the fact that anything you pitch on this show, the regular person watching it, who is not a VC, who is not very well versed in tech, should be able to understand it, right? That is something that we always say. Even your deck should be as simple as maybe a 10-year-old would be able to understand it. In fact, we even had a challenge way back when we actually had 13-year-olds listen to the pitches of the entrepreneur contestants. It was one of the challenges that we had one of our judges conduct for the show. So, I think that's a lesson in trying to simplify and trying to really minimize all distractions, being true to the core of what it is that you're trying to pitch. Because I think sometimes some entrepreneurs are so they get so carried away with trying to sound intelligent, trying to sound like this technical jargon will make me, an expert or someone that you should respect because I know all of this, right? But when in fact it's the other way around. Being complex means that you have not really thought through your business, but being simple means you've taken the time to be able to distill into those few words or slides the essence of what it is that you're putting out into the world. So I feel that people who have done, the kind of study, research, internal assessment of what it is that they're offering to the world will be able to get it down to, the very core principles, ideas that translate simply to our audience and to the investor what it is that they're putting out into the world. So when you have a simple pitch, that is the hardest thing to do, but that's also the kind of pitches that resonate universally with everyone.
I think it's really, really well said. I think I think we've all been guilty of trying to overcomplicate and make ourselves sound a bit more clever because we think it's going to go down well. And actually, even Alex Hormozy now says, if you're writing anything, put it through the Hemingway tool and make it like a grade 3. Make it so simple that anyone can understand it. We had a guest on recently called John Bates, who is a communications coach in the US, and he taught all the NASA astronauts how to communicate and still speaks to them now. And he talked a little bit about presentation skills, not in pitching though. So he talked about not prowling around when you're on stage and talking in a simple way and how to, speak well and concisely. But I'm interested in how you would take that and sort of give advice for someone who's doing a pitch. How do you overcome nervousness? When we're nervous, we tend to do certain things. We fidget, we twitch, we stumble over our words. What are some of the things you would say to your contestants to control their nervousness when they're speaking to a group of people that are maybe intimidating?
Sure. Okay. So this is a good, quick and easy thing to do. So before you pitch, whether it's on a TV show or just to an investor, like in person, in a table like this, is, before you get to that room, before you enter the room, just do like a Superman pose.
Nice.
Like, it could be like having your arms up there or doing a Wonder Woman pose, like, grabbing your waist and just doing, deep breathing. It's always good to be able to center yourself. And the best way to do it is to manifest it through, your body language. It's a little bit over when you think about it, because, if you're outside the room, you're looking at this guy, what's he doing, right? It may look and feel a bit awkward, but believe me, what it does to you before you enter that room or before you have that conversation, it does so much to you. And to also make it a point that you breathe, right? Before you enter that room, just a couple of deep breaths. The way it prepares you, I cannot put into words, because you have to do it. I cannot put into words how that really changes just the way you feel and the way you're prepared to get into that pitch. So that would be like a good piece of advice that I think anyone can take to heart, before you even, have that first initial hi, hello.
I love the Superman pose. We went to a mastermind recently, and a sales guy was talking about, before a sales call, just stand there with your hands on your hips, like clenched fist, hands on your hips for 2 minutes, and you'll be surprised how much more confident you are. I think that's a brilliant one. I'll be using that very soon, I'm sure. I'm interested in, we've gone through the story of, pitching and startups and business and mentorship. I'm interested in how you see the business landscape changing in 2025. Obviously, your show coming to the Middle East, you're looking at Dubai as an innovative hub of business. How do you see the actual landscape of business changing?
Okay. Something that is very unique in Dubai that I think not a lot of, places in the world have, is that there is so much energy from people from across the world, specifically looking at Dubai as not just their next place where they will do business, but their next place where they will live. I think you get a lot of transient business people going to different parts of Asia, Europe, but it is really here in Dubai where I feel, and this is based on what I've been hearing people, with their experiences, telling me that, this really is a place where you can build your thing and build your life, right? And I think from someone like me who is from Asia, I've always thought, and I know for a fact that a lot of people are also looking at Asia, Southeast Asia in particular, right? But the kind of energy and opportunities and conversations that I'm having here in Dubai in particular are different from anywhere else that I've been. I think also the openness of people here, because I think what's unique about Dubai is that because most people here are immigrants and expats, then there is no inclination to kind of have, okay, this is we, this is, and that's you, right? Because everyone here is from everywhere else, right? Unlike, for example, in Asia, a majority of the population is from that country.
Yeah.
Right? Here, it's the other way around. So I think the conversations that you have here are very telling of the global, not just perspective, but also global activity, inward ideas, businesses that are going to be happening here in Dubai, and I would feel also across the region in the years to come. I mean, the fact that you have the resources here, the fact that you have the best minds also going here, that's why I'm excited, to launch the final pitch in Dubai and scale it across the region, because, there's a lot happening here. And we feel that because there's that opportunity, we want to be able to have our platform as the opportunity for entrepreneurs to now come and look at, this place in the world and say, okay, I want to build something. Let me use the final pitch, as the platform to be able to, because they will join the show, have not just a springboard, but it's an exponential platform to be able to scale whatever it is that they're bringing here.
Absolutely. And there's so many startups here, there's so many incubators and sort of big VCs that would be so interested. And what do you think in terms of business in general in 2025? Because obviously you're going to see all these businesses with new startup ideas. Do you have an inclination from your network and people you talk to and yourself of where business as a whole is going to go? Because it's been very much, like you said, blockchain, AI. Where do you see it going as the next sort of place to be a part of?
Yeah, I think I'm the wrong person to ask that. Yeah, I think, but my answer to that would be, I think regardless of the businesses, I think we're always going to be following, but not necessarily, basing our decision of who to invite based on what is new or shiny at that moment. But, we've always taken the stance that we want to be able to work with the most exciting entrepreneurs who are out to build, great things, regardless whether it's in line with what is in or, the technology that's at that moment being used. So we want to be able to onboard, entrepreneurs who, are in it for the long haul and not just a flash in the pan that is riding on the, the current wave of whatever technology that's in right now.
And so someone who is an entrepreneur like that, who's in it for the long term, who's found real value and is looking to, to pitch in the next year or so for investment, maybe with your show or maybe not, what would your piece of advice be to them to help them make the next step?
Okay. I think just go out there. I mean, the thing with where we are right now is that there's so many smart, educated, passionate people who are building things, or at least trying to build something, right? And until you get to, that day or moment where you actually submit that application or go to, that pitch or make that call, I think that's the stumbling block that a lot of entrepreneurs face. It's really, taking that first step, regardless how small that is. To me, it's all about, giving it a shot. A lot of the entrepreneurs who come on board the show, maybe, if you come to think of it, they're not the most ideal. Maybe they're not even the best, right? But because, they took the time and they actually had the guts to be able to say, hey, I'm not so prepared yet, but hey, here I am. I'm giving it my shot. And we actually gave them a shot. And, what that created for them, even if they didn't actually land a deal, was that it allowed them to be able to get seen by the right people, which then gave them sort of the platform to then pitch their businesses to other investors, other partners, employees, which created for them more opportunities down the road.
So you're actually giving them the tools, not just doing the job for them. That's brilliant.
Yeah, we gave them the platform. They took the shot, and sometimes they missed, sometimes they made it, but that's the important thing, that they take the shot. And
exactly.
you'll never really know until you take that shot if something's gonna do wonders for you.
Exactly. You've got to take your shot. John, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for sharing. And I think what you're doing is really inspiring, and I'm really looking forward to seeing it in the Middle East. So thank you for coming on.
Thanks so much, Freddie, for having me here. Thank you.
If you like these episodes, feel free to subscribe to our Healthy Hustle newsletter below, where you'll get behind the scenes information from our guests, as well as from the studio operator who helps us create these cinematic episodes. It's also full of business advice and tips, and it will help you join the community of healthy entrepreneurs.